Okay guys, welcome back to the Desert Spring. So today we have a pretty funny video. Now this is kind of be a kind of a blind react video. I was looking for a couple of other videos and it just took me a bit too long to make a decision on what I was going to make a video on. So I was like, you know what, I'm just going to go ahead and pick this one because it looked like kind of easy pickings. So, which doesn't surprise me because it's not that hard to find, kind of funny videos. So anyways, before we get into it, thank you for being here. If you have a story about a deconstruction, please get in contact with me. Down in the description box, you'll see my email, desertspring111@gmail.com. It's not the Desert Spring 111, it's desertspring111@gmail.com. Did I spell it right? Yeah, it should be. Yeah, that's it. desertspring111@gmail.com. So please, I'd love to have an interview with you, talk about your deconstruction story, how you left Christianity, where you're at now, whether you're atheist, you're agnostic, whether you're in a different, in a different religion altogether, if you're, Buddhist, whatever, Hindu, let me know. I'd like to have a conversation with you and just to kind of see kind of where people go when they walk away from Christianity. So once again, don't forget to like and subscribe. And today, what we've got going on is this coexist, okay? Coexist. I don't think it's that bad of a deal. We've got this channel. It is the God Made Man. That's what it looks like. It looks like the God Made Man. And the name of the video is Christianity is the One True Religion. Here's why. Now, coexist is kind of a movement that is I don't think it's a bad thing. Okay, it's not it's pretty obvious that Christians like to shit on every other religion and start fights with every other religion. There's plenty of videos on YouTube. I don't need to post a ton of them, but here we are once again. So we're gonna hear this. The reason why is because we didn't even get a minute into the video, and this guy is already excluding a bunch of different sects of Christianity from Christianity, which is so fucking hilarious. It's so fucking hilarious because once again I was watching a video where this guy was basically saying these things about Christianity, and then all of these different, not everybody in Christianity believes that, not everybody in Christianity believes that, all this kind of stuff. And so, they always run to hide that, Christianity is this big, massive thing, right? Which basically everybody who sees the cross and assumes Jesus, for the most part, we kind of see them as Christians, right? But he intentionally excludes, in the fine details, in the fine print, he intentionally excludes a bunch of Christian denominations, like straight up Christian denominations. So let's get into it. I think this shit is funny. We'll see. I'll have to pause it, and we need to, because he just throws it up there like it's just something to move right past. But we're gonna pause it. We're gonna zoom in, and we're gonna find every single one. Oh, I don't have my glasses. All right. Well, while this starts, my glasses are in the car. All right. Yep, that's not gonna work. Never mind.
The top 3 religions of the world, based on the number of followers, are Christianity, Islam, and Hinduism. We also have Judaism, Buddhism, Sikhism, Taoism, the Baha'i Faith, Scientology, Rastafarianism, and Jainism.
Wait for it.
Don't forget about the gods from Greek, Norse, Roman, and Egyptian mythologies, as well as the multiple cults and denominations.
The multiple cults and denominations. Okay. All right, so let's look at your multiple cults and denominations list. Let's see, where was it? There's Protestantism, Orthodoxy. I saw Catholicism in there. Where's Catholicism? Methodist, Baptist, Pentecostal. Okay, so why wouldn't all those fly under Christianity? What the fuck? So let's see, Baptist, Pentecostal, Evangelical, Unitarian, Christian Science, Latter-day Saints, Oneness Pentecostalism. That's interesting. Haven't heard of that one before. Seventh-day Adventist. Where is it? I saw Catholicism was in there. Anglicanism, Presbyterian, Methodist, Baptist, Pentecostal, Evangelical, Coptic, Christian. I love how he's got Christianity completely separate. Oh, that's too small. I can't see that. Ah, damn it. How did I do this? 50, 50. Oh, that's it. That's all the options I have. Okay. If you can read it. Ah, I can't read that small. I can't see. My eyes are no good. Why? Church of God. Church of God is on there. If Church of God is on there, then that must mean that the Church of Christ is on there as well. And we all know what the Church of Christ says. Everybody's going to hell. Every fucking person. Doesn't matter if you believe in Jesus or not. You're going to hell. Church of God, Presbyterian, Angelic. I swear to God, Catholicism was like was in this general area of his video. Pentecostal, Baptist, Methodist, Presbyterian, Lutheran, Protestant, Orthodoxy. Catholicism must be behind me, but I don't really have a way of moving my... No, I don't have a way of moving my thing. Damn it. Oh, that's so annoying. Anyways, Catholicism is up there. Catholicism, I think that's it, maybe. I can't. Yeah, I think that's it right there. Coptic Christian. Anyways, I think it's hilarious how he put basically everybody else outside of Christianity, which is immediately hilarious. But,
within
let's
said
keep
religions. So, which religion is true? If any of them are true at all? Maybe you've asked that question before, or maybe you've wondered, where did we come from? Why do we exist? And what happens when we die? These are questions that humans have been asking since the beginning. And they're the very questions that religions and belief systems have been trying to answer for just as long. I've struggled with these questions for years, but I've come to an answer. And I want to share the thought process that has led me to that answer. So is there one true religion? I believe there is. In fact, I believe there are actually two true religions. Now, before we start comparing religions, we first have to ask, why would a religion exist in the first place? To figure out whether a religion is true or effective, we need to first understand the purpose, the end goal, because you first have to know what a religion is trying to accomplish before you can determine if it accomplishes it or not. In his book, The Evolution of God, Robert Wright suggests that religion wasn't consciously invented, but rather emerged naturally as a byproduct of human evolution. Religion helped humans to explain the unseen, to make sense of the world around them. So when humans saw or experienced things like thunder and lightning, very, very frightening, floods and disease and death, they began attributing these events to invisible intentional agents, spirits or gods. Say if a river...
that's accurate. It's not unknown that, back in the day we used to say when a person died of sickness or some sort of bacterial infection that, they did some sort of sin against God and God is upset and that's why he's punishing them. I mean, that used to be the train of thought for broad medicine.
Flooded. Well, it was because the gods of the river were angry with the humans for whatever reason, and they flooded the river, they caused destruction and death, so we need to now appease these gods. But as humans became more knowledgeable, as technology has advanced, we've learned how to anticipate and control the rains and flooding. So eventually, that angry God just ceased to exist. And as culture, science, and humanity evolves, so does our understanding of the nature and the character of God or gods. Karl Marx famously called religion the opiate of the people. In his view, religion functioned like a drug, not to explain the world, but to cope with it. Both of these perspectives of religion are still common today. And both perspectives point to a very similar assumption, that there is a deep problem humanity is trying to solve. That problem can be summed up in our universal desire to answer 5 foundational questions. And these questions are essentially what make up a worldview. Where did we come from? Who are we? Why do we exist? How should we live? And what happens when we die? Let's put it even more succinctly than that. Origin, identity, meaning, morality, destiny. When we ask these deep questions, they naturally point us to something beyond ourselves, something outside of humanity. And it's not just religious people that ask these questions. It's the religious and non-religious alike. We attempt to answer these questions with religion, philosophy, or reason. If we distill it down even more, the picture is simple. humanity on one side, some concept of the divine or a better self on the other side, and a gap in between. How each belief system attempts to bridge this gap is the standard by which we will compare them. Now, whether it's the Eightfold Path of Buddhism, the
Okay, so far I don't have anything. Seems
cycles of
reasonable.
karma in Hinduism, the 5 pillars of Islam, or the Mosaic law of Judaism, we see that every religion has systems built around human effort to reach the other side. Christianity, by contrast, begins with the claim that we cannot earn our way to God, but that He made a way to us through grace. That reversal isn't just rare, it's unique and stands alone. I want to repeat that. This claim that God came down to us and bridged the gap himself is not found in any religion but one. Not one or two, Christianity alone. A few weeks ago, a friend asked me if I was religious, and more recently, a younger friend, obviously younger, asked me if I was hella Christian. They were both asking me the same thing, just in different ways. Do you go to church? Do you read your Bible? Do you pray? Do you turn the other cheek? Are you a nice person? Do you give money to the poor? Do you avoid drugs and alcohol? Do you not cuss? Do you save sex for marriage? In other words, do you do the things that make someone look like a good Christian? Are you religious is a question that makes sense for every religion except Christianity. Because in every other religion, the system is based on what you must do. And on the...
So really quick, so in Hinduism you have, let's see, Vishnu is an example of a person who descends down to humanity, to human form, to bridge the gap. Buddhism, you have Mahayana. Sikhism, you have the specific human savers. Sikhism has something, Sufism, Christian mysticism, the Kabbalah. So, you know, the idea that the Christianity is, you know, whenever he said that, that immediately was like, that doesn't sound right, because I know that there's a couple of things, certainly in Hinduism, where, you know, Vishnu is basically a god who comes into the human world and bridges the gap, you know. If you're Hindu, please feel free to go down into the comments and clean up that ideology, but from my understanding, you know, that the idea that God sent to bridge the gap directly, I mean, that's not something that is solely Christian.
basis of what you've done, you receive. You can say, I'm a good Muslim, or I'm a good Buddhist, or I'm a good Hindu because you follow certain practices, rituals, and moral codes. And you would be right, because in those belief systems, that's the standard by which you are judged. In every religion, the responsibility of bridging the gap between humanity and the divine falls on the human. You work, you strive, you earn. But not so in Christianity. Christianity flips that paradigm entirely. Only in Christianity do we find the claim that God himself took on that responsibility of bridging the gap. God came to earth, lived the perfect life that we could not live, died
Jesus did not live a perfect life.
the death that we deserved, and he bridged the gap himself. Ephesians chapter 2, verses 8 through 9 claims, "For it is by grace you have been saved through faith, and this is not of yourselves, but it is a gift of God, not by works, so that no one can boast." And he didn't do this in response to our good deeds or good performance or religious behavior. Romans 5:8 says, "While we were still sinners, Christ died for us." So as a Christian, I can't say that I am a good Christian because I do this and I do that. I can only say that I am a Christian because of what God did for me. When my friend asked me if I was hella Christian, there was another kid standing nearby who overheard my answer, and he walked up to me and he asked, "So if God did everything, then does that mean we can do whatever we want?" In other words, if salvation is a gift, what role do our actions play? What about the works? John Lennox put it this way: every religion is merit-based, where acceptance comes at the end. Only in Christianity does acceptance come at the beginning, and the works flow from that place of acceptance. So when we look at the difference between merit-based religion,
I'm going to take a second to think about that. Interesting. The thing is that Jesus, this idea comes from Paul. Right off the bat, everything that he's saying, that Christianity is special because first you are given the gift of eternal life, and then from there, you basically grow on your path. All these things come from Paul, right? Because Jesus touted from the frickin' rooftop that not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but only the one who does the will of my Father. Right? So there is still this idea that just because you become a Christian does not mean that you're going to go to heaven. He's making the argument that Christianity is special in the way that it is the only religion that you become a Christian and you are immediately able to enter the kingdom of heaven. That is just not the case here, right? Matthew 7:21-23. Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but only the ones who does the will of my Father. Let's see, it's parable. Let me pull this one up here real quick. Matthew 7:21-23. 7:21-23. Wherefore, by their fruits ye shall know them. Okay, let's see. A good tree cannot bring forth evil fruit, neither can a corrupt tree bring forth good fruit. Every tree that bringeth not forth good fruit is hewn down and cast into the fire. Wherefore, by the fruits ye shall know them. And we know that Jesus really cares about your fruits, because he walked by that fig tree that wasn't bearing any fruit and immediately cursed it and it died, right? So Jesus maybe was not so of the idea, maybe getting into heaven isn't as easy as Paul had portrayed it, because Paul portrays it as just believe Jesus Christ died on the cross for your sins and you go to heaven. And that's it. That's it, right? You believe, you profess, you confess, you're done. That's it. And you are immediately in the kingdom of heaven. Jesus paints a very different picture. He says that just because just because you say that you know me doesn't mean that you're going to enter the kingdom of heaven. So don't think that when you become a Christian, you save and you repent from your sins, that automatically you're going to enter the kingdom of heaven. That doesn't work like that, right? It says by your fruits, okay? So, let's see. In this parable, 5 virgins are prepared, 5 are not. Virgins representing professed believers are locked out of the wedding banquet, illustrating that being a part of the group is not enough. 25:1-13. Let's go look at this really quick. I'm not going to spend too much time here. Matthew 25, 1-13. Then shall the kingdom of the heaven... 1-13. Then shall the kingdom of heaven be likened unto 10 virgins, which took their lamps and went forth into the bridegroom. Ah, that's right. I remember this. Now. This is a good one. Okay. So then shall the kingdom of heaven be likened unto 10 virgins, which took their lamps and went forth to meet the bridegroom. And 5 of them were wise, and 5 were foolish. They that were foolish took their lamps and took no oil with them, but the wise took oil in their vessels with their lamps. Whilst the bridegroom tarried, they all slumbered and slept. And at midnight there was a cry made, Behold, the bridegroom cometh, go ye out to meet him. Then all those virgins arose and trimmed their lamps. And the foolish said unto the wise, Give us of your oil, for our lamps are gone out. But the wise answered, saying, Not so, lest there be enough for us and you. But go ye rather to them that sell, and buy for yourselves. And while you went to buy, the bridegroom came, and they were ready Jesus, this Bible reading crap is always so complicated in King James Version. And while they went to buy, the bridegroom came, and they that were ready went in with him to the marriage, and the door was shut. Afterward came also the other virgins, saying, Lord, Lord, open to us. But he answered and said, Verily I say unto you, I know you not. Watch therefore, for ye know neither the day nor the hour when the Son of Man cometh. For the kingdom of heaven is a man traveling into a far country, who called on his own servants and delivered them to him. Okay, so there's another example of, you can't just casually be Christian and expect to see Jesus or expect to enter the kingdom of heaven, right? It says Here's another idea of works. You need to be ready. You can't just profess that you're a Christian and do that. No, works. You need to be ready. Okay. Righteousness succeeding the Pharisees said, unless your righteousness exceeds teacher of the law of the Pharisees, you will not enter the kingdom of heaven. Matthew 5:20. Unless they are born again, wheat and tares as true believers. False believers will grow together, but in the end, the tares will be gathered and burned. Matthew 13:24-30. Let's see. Matthew 13:24-30. That just breaks up the idea of true Christians versus non-Christians, right? Matthew 13:24-30. Another parable put he forth unto them, saying, the kingdom of heaven is likened unto a man which soweth good seed in his field. But while men slept, his enemy came and sowed tares among the wheat, and went his way. And when the blade was sprung up and brought forth fruit, the appeared the tares also. So the servants of the householder came and said unto him, Sir, didst thou sow good seed in thy field? From whence hath it tares? He said unto them, An enemy hath done this. Thy servant said unto him, Wilt thou then that we go and gather them up? But he said, Nay, lest while we gather up the tares, ye root up also the wheat. Let them grow together until the harvest. And in the time of harvest I will say to the reapers, Gather ye together first the tares, and then bind them in the bundles and burn them, but gather the wheat into the barn. So just another example of, these are just examples of Jesus saying parables, writing parables, that just because you profess Jesus, just because you believe in Jesus, just because you do all this kind of shit, does not mean that you're going to enter the kingdom of heaven, right? That you have to be ready, you have to be prepared for it. But I think it's so funny at the beginning of this video how he immediately excludes half of Christianity, if not all of Christianity, from Christianity at the very beginning of the video. It's kind of funny. Well, let's get back into this.
Religion and grace-based religion, we see that the former offers change from the outside in, while the latter causes change from the inside out. In every religion.
Yeah, so immediately the first thing that pops in my mind is the camel passing through the eye of the needle, right? Grace-based religion, the idea that you just believe it and God gives you grace and suddenly you can enter the kingdom of heaven, right? It's not that easy. It's not that easy, right? There's a lot of things that you have to be willing to let go of and all this kind of stuff. And it's very much a works-based religion. People don't realize that because Paul came in and started teaching a lot of the ideas. Paul came in and started teaching a lot of the ideas that, all we had to do was believe in him and profess his name, and then suddenly we would be in heaven with God, all that kind of stuff. We don't really see that from Jesus, though. Jesus is very much about works.
Good works are the means by which people attempt to attain salvation, but only in true Christianity are good works the result of salvation, not the cause of it. This doesn't mean that everyone who appears to live a Christian life truly is a Christian. Now, if you're not religious, if you consider yourself agnostic or atheist, or maybe you consider yourself spiritual, but not tied to any religion, you might think that none of this applies to you. But in your case, it's not Krishna, Buddha, or Allah, or Jesus that you look up to. It's you. You decide what's right and wrong. You determine how life should be lived. You become the final authority. This is why I believe that ultimately there are only two religions in the world: Christianity and the religion of self. Now, I'm not saying that all of the religions are inherently selfish or that Christians can't be selfish. Rather, it means that every belief system outside of Christianity teaches, in one way or another, that the solution to the human condition lies within ourselves, through our effort, our enlightenment, our goodness, or our discipline. Christianity declares that the answer comes from outside of us, not through our striving, but through God's initiative, God's grace, and God's finished work. Now, while
Okay, you guys go down in the comments and tell me, That just does not sound. That just doesn't sound right at all. This is kind of a blind react, so I don't have anything immediately prepared. Go down into the comments and kind of like chatter away at the keyboard and tell me that just doesn't sound. The idea that Christianity, that there's only two religions, Christianity and self, and Christianity is special in that, I don't see it, so really quick, I have this small thing pulled up here. These are just Google searches. This isn't anything fancy. It's not anything prepared, serious research done and prepared for the video, but, just quick differences on Paul and Jesus. The law of Moses. Jesus stated he came to fulfill the law, not to abolish it. Matthew 5:17-20. Paul taught the believers are released from the law and that salvation comes through faith, not works. Romans 6:14 and 7 and 6. Method of salvation. Jesus emphasized keeping the commandments and doing the will of the Father. Works. Matthew 19:17 and 7:21. Paul preached justification by faith alone apart from the works of the law. Ephesians 2:8-9. The kingdom. Jesus preached gospel of the kingdom, an earthly Jewish focus. Paul focused on the gospel of grace, a heavenly church-focused message. Dietary laws and socializing. Paul taught that all foods are clean and believers have freedom, which differs from Jesus' adherence to traditional Jewish law. Some suggest Paul's emphasis on separating from certain believers contradicts Jesus' practice of eating with sinners. Divorce. In 1 Corinthians 7:10-12, Paul gives instructions on divorce, distinguishing his own commands from those previously given by Jesus. Authority. Paul sometimes distinguishes between commands from the Lord and his own instructions, 1 Corinthians 7:12, leading to debates over whether he was expanding or contradicting Jesus' teaching. Let's see. So this, this is just kind of a quick kind of Google search on just the thing. But there are so many videos. All you have to do is go on YouTube, hit the little search button, and search difference between Jesus and Paul's teachings, and you will just be shocked with the sheer number of videos that are put out on this topic, because there is so much content there. As far as the difference between what Jesus was teaching and the difference what Paul was teaching. Paul was very much teaching faith by grace, and you immediately get into heaven. Jesus did not teach that one bit. And so basically what he's taking here is Christianity. He's labeling it Christianity and self, but what he's actually related is Paul and the rest of the world. Because Paul was basically the one that said, yeah, you can be completely lazy, completely do whatever, just basically live your life however you want. Because as long as you're doing these key things, as long as you're saying these key words, then you're already Christian, you're already going to heaven. And Jesus says the opposite of that. Jesus says, just because you say that you're Christian, just because you say that you believe in me, just because you profess my name, just because you cast out demons in my name, just because you heal people in my name, doesn't mean that I know you, doesn't mean that you're following me, right? So that is just the very first thing that comes out of my mind. And so he's making this idea, which apparently, according to the beginning of his video, Pentecostal, Buddhist, church, maybe he's Church of Christ, who knows, but Church of God, Protestantism, Catholicism, all these things, none of these things are Christian. These are all just different. It's like, what? So, whatever.
Christianity is the only religion to make this claim. It's not that claim itself that fully convinces me. It's the implication of the claim and the complication that follows that convince me. Whether it's obeying laws, performing rituals, accumulating good deeds, or achieving enlightenment, you'll notice that the burden of being made right with the divine falls on human effort. Humans naturally build frameworks that reward effort, track performance, and create hierarchies based on behavior. And because of that, the criteria for acceptance are often visible, measurable, and understandable by human standards. And every religion but Christianity is set up this way. You do good, you get rewarded. You follow the rules, you earn approval. This suggests to me that these religions originated from human minds. While most, if not all, claim divine origin or inspiration, the structure they offer reflects a distinct human pattern, a path where acceptance or enlightenment or salvation is earned through personal effort, which aligns more with how
Matthew 19:17. Let's go for another read here. Matthew 19:17. Oh, all right, let's back up for just a touch for a little bit of context here. Why not? We've got Matthew 19, and he laid his hands on them and departed thence, and behold, once came and said, okay, what are we talking about in general? Oh, this isn't my big Bible. I don't know what we're talking about in general. There are some eunuchs born in their mother's womb. Okay. Matthew 19:17. Here we're at, guys. And he laid his hands on them and departed thence, and behold, one came and said unto him, Good master, what good thing shall I do that I may have eternal life? And he said unto them, Why callest thou me good? This is Jesus responding, supposedly. Why callest thou me good? There is none good but one, that is God. But if thou wilt enter into life... So first off, even Jesus is saying he's not perfect. What the fuck? I'm sorry. That's just immediately. Jesus just said he's not good. So why the fuck would we believe him? Can we not take this guy at face value? He just said he's not a good person. He's like, no, I'm not good. What the fuck? There's only one who's good, and that's God. So Jesus is showing his separation from God right there. What the fuck? Like, that's crazy, you know? But anyways, why callest thou me good? There is none good but one, that is God. But if thou wilt enter into life, keep the commandments. He said unto them, which Jesus said, Thou shalt do no murder, thou shalt not commit adultery, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not bear false witness. Honor thy father and thy mother, and thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. A little cue on that, a little argument I like to say is that love your neighbor as yourself. It is okay to hate your neighbor completely, only as long as you also hate yourself completely. I say that facetiously. Whenever I was walking away from Christianity, I was going on a self-love journey where I was actually accepting myself and forgiving myself and loving myself and not needing Jesus to love me as much as I loved myself. And in that process, I was like, oh, so me being an absolute dick to everybody was perfectly fine because I hated myself. So I'm still being biblical about my hate. Honor thy father and thy mother, and thou shalt love the neighbor as thyself. The young man saith unto him, All these things I have kept from my youth up. What lack I yet? So first of all, let's take the idea that Jesus just said, this guy just walked in and said, God, what do I do? Jesus, what do I do to have eternal life? You know, good master. And immediately Jesus says, first of all, don't call me fucking good because I'm not fucking good. The only one who's good is God. So immediately Jesus is telling us, hey dog, I'm not your fucking God. Don't call me your God, and I'm not good, so stop it. And we fucking worship the guy and call him perfect. And he's telling us to not. Okay, whatever. Then he says to keep the commandments. What do I do to reach eternal life? Jesus says, keep the commandments. What the fuck? This guy's off his rocker. He's over here saying that we don't have to do shit. Jesus is saying, you got a fucking laundry list of shit you got to do. And the young man saith unto him, All these things I have kept from my youth up. What lack I yet? Jesus said unto him, If thou wilt be perfect, go and sell that thou hast, and give to the poor, and thou shalt have treasure in heaven, and come and follow me. But the young man heard this, and he got sorrow because he had great possessions. Verily I say unto you, that a rich man shall hardly enter into the kingdom of heaven. And again I say unto you, it is easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle, or to go through the eye of a needle, than it is for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. So, very quick chat on that, right? Let's, Jesus Christ, get my camera angles right. Let's just chat on that, okay? Because what I've always bullshit, when I've kind of come to potentially accept is that when Jesus was talking about entering the kingdom of heaven, you have to realize that in the book of Thomas, oops, wrong book. Oh, it's over there. Anyways, in the book of Thomas, it's across the room. I'm not going to go grab it. He says that the kingdom of heaven is already inside of you and it's already outside of you. And you just have to wake up to realizing that you are living in the kingdom of heaven. But if you don't realize that you're living in the kingdom of heaven, then you will be poor and you will live in poverty. Okay? So Jesus basically tells us, also in the channeled text here, from a girl who grew up Presbyterian, became atheist, and then apparently Jesus popped into her mind. And so, personally, between Paul and this girl, I'd rather follow this girl's teachings because these are significantly better than anything that Paul had ever said. So, but the idea is, what are you so attached to? What are your attachments? What is the thing that you refuse to let go of, right? We all have these attachments in life, and we're attached. My thing growing up, and the reason why I was living in hell and creating my own torment on this fucking planet, is because I was so attached to having one spouse, period, full stop. One spouse. That's all my entire goal on this earth since I was a child was I want to have one spouse and that's it. I don't want to be married a bunch of times. I don't want to be divorced a bunch of times. Like, I didn't say, oh, I want to be a firefighter. Oh, I want to be a freaking, a doctor. I want to, I might have said I wanted to be a farmer because I love animals, but for the most part, it was, I want to be an amazing dad, because my dad sucked. I love him to death, but he wasn't the greatest dad. My dad sucked, and he was divorced, like, all the time. And I grew up in a household where the constant threat of divorce was thrown around like a batch of cookies for everybody to have. And so, my thing was, I'm going to be married once. No, I'm never going to be married twice. I'm never going to, all that kind of stuff, right? So, when I got divorced, that fucked me bad. To the point to where I hated life so much because I was so attached to the idea. I would not let go of the idea that I was going to be married more than once. So much so that I was willing to stay in a relationship that I didn't really, I didn't feel my best in. I didn't feel expressed in. I didn't feel like this person brings out the best in me. No, at about the second year in the marriage, I thought to myself, I jumped into this shit way too soon. I married a person who I didn't know, and next thing you know, now I'm stuck in this. I've devoted my life to God. I've told God that I'm never going to divorce this girl, and here I am, and I'm at such a young age, and so I found myself kind of like in this conundrum, and so when I went through the divorce, that shit was more tormenting to me than anything because it had shattered the only goal that I had given myself in life, which was to be married once, right? Which is why what followed was depression and then eventually suicidal ideation, a couple of attempts on my life. So this is the idea, right? For me, entering the kingdom of heaven was accepting the fact that it's okay for me to get married more than once. It's okay for me to love myself anyway. It's okay for me to mess up relationships and to get into a relationship and fall in love and get married and fuck it up and get divorced and fall in love again and get married and fuck it up again and get divorced. It's okay for me to do that, right? And once I accepted that and I let that go and I let go of my attachment to only being married once, then I got so much happier. It felt like a burden lifted off of my back. And so, the kingdom of heaven is here and now is the idea that you can live your life expressively. You can be happy and live in heaven today. You don't have to wait until you die. Because to be frank, heaven and hell on the other side doesn't exist. But, you can have heaven today. You don't have to wait. How can you have heaven today? Look at the world. This place is a shit show. Accurate. You know? But it doesn't change the fact that you have to perceive it as a shit show, right? Why is it that you see yourself a shit show? Because you didn't see, your life is not where you expected it to be. You're waking up, doing a job that you didn't expect to be doing, living a way you didn't expect to be living, and instead of being at peace with that and enjoying what you're getting out of it, you are creating this mental torment, living in a shitty place. So you're living in hell before you even have the option of going to a hell, right? And to be frank, I just don't believe in hell. I mean, look at the earth. This place is hell. I mean, let's be real. You know, between a crazy lake of fire and a crazy fucking planet. I mean, I just don't think that that it's too hard to kind of move away from. Anyways, back to the video. I'm not going to turn this into an hour long deal here.
Humans naturally think and operate. Now, Christians are not immune to this. We too can give supreme importance to our good works and find identity in them. But the difference is that by doing so, we completely miss what it means to be a Christian, whereas other religions are right on the money.
I would say they've completely missed what it is to be a Christian from the get-go. I think the second you walk into a church, you've missed the complete idea of being a Christian.
True Christianity declares that all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God, and no amount of good works can earn right standing with God.
So that's Paul. That's where they start the whole thing. That's where they start the brainwashing. Ideally, you walk into a church when you're about 7, 8 years old so that they can start you young on the idea that you're trash and you're garbage and that you're not worth anything. And only by the grace of God are you allowed to even consider being a happy person.
So the solution was not to try harder, but that God himself came down to us, lived the life that we couldn't live, died the death that we deserved.
No, he didn't. He literally just said, I'm not God and I'm not good. I mean, we just read that. He said, I'm not God, I'm not good. So
was resurrected and then bridged the gap.
You know, arguable as to whether or not that happened, but, you know.
Himself. Thus, salvation isn't achieved, it's received. It's a message that offends our human pride. You can't...
Do we need to read this again where it says that salvation's achieved? Let's see. If thou be perfect, go and sell what thou hast and give to the poor, and thou shalt have treasure in heaven, right? So what is it to enter the kingdom of heaven? Thou shalt not murder, thou shalt not commit adultery, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not bear false witness, honor thy father and thy mother, and thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. Do this, keep the commandments, and you'll enter into the kingdom of heaven. Let's see here. Yeah. So, you know, this is classic BS.
Earn it. You don't deserve it. And you can't say that I deserve it because of my piety or my diligence or my hard work. You can only accept what was done by Jesus Christ.
And once again, he says he's not God and he's not good. Why the fuck are you making this guy out to be a god? He says he's not God. So, I mean...
And that's precisely what makes Christianity so likely to be true. If humans hadn't...
So let's get through this, and then I'll kind of go into some of the more spiritual aspects of Jesus's teaching.
In Christianity, it would look like every other religion. When it comes to merit-based religion, every single religion falls under merit-based religion because ultimately the answer comes from us. When it comes to grace-based religion, there is only one religion that claims that the answer comes from outside of us. If humans had written Christianity, we would have written ourselves in as the hero of the story. We create a system where the good are...
Did you not? Is that not what the God's chosen people thing is all about? Is that not?
Are rewarded, the bad are punished, and the rules are clear. Something we can control, measure, and take credit for. But Christianity flips that script. Its central message is this: you can't save yourself, so God saved you. It doesn't...
So, you know, once again, this is the idea where we get to the question of what is saved, right? Because Jesus's teachings, keep in mind, guys, look, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, all this stuff that we have that's in red letters, these are decades after Jesus has left the planet. Jesus left the planet decades passed by, and then they started writing out word for word what Jesus said, okay? Now, what we pulled up in the desert in the 40s in the Nag Hammadi library is the book of Thomas, okay? Written by Thomas the Apostle, okay? And in there, you have a completely different idea of what salvation is, okay? In this book, which is, once again, something that Christianity is never going to accept. Oops, upside down. This Unknown Life of Jesus Christ. That's what it is. Unknown Life of Jesus Christ. I don't know why I kept saying The Secret Life of Jesus Christ. I must have been thinking about another book. The Unknown Life of Jesus Christ. This basically is Jesus's MO. I mean, a lot of Christians say that this isn't accurate and it's a bunch of BS. When you read what Jesus teaches in this thing, it's his MO. He goes into a temple, he learns their spiritual lessons, he sees that there's a bunch of shit that's going on, he sees that they're not worshiping the one true God, and that they're making everything out to be a god. There's this statue in town, and it is the essence of creation. He goes and he cuts down the statue. He burns down the statue, and then he has to flee the town because everybody's trying to kill him. Then he goes to the next town, and he does the same shit again and again and again and again. He walks into the town as this young kid. Everybody is shocked about how he has all this spiritual knowledge. He studies their spiritual practices, and then he starts calling out all the bullshit and running amok, and then he gets kicked out of town. And then eventually, he basically burned all of his bridges in the Middle East to where, at around 20 years old, 22 years old, he had to go back to Israel because he had nowhere else to go because he kept pissing off all the religious authorities. That is Jesus for you in a nutshell, okay? So that is why, for me, this is not so out there to believe. But in this book, two things happen that I think are incredibly important. One, in this book, there is a differentiation from when Jesus speaks and when God speaks through the mouth of Jesus. Think about that. This book makes the differentiation of Jesus said this, and then God said this through Jesus' mouth. Okay? So now we can look at the Bible, and whenever Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the life, maybe God was speaking out of the mouth of Jesus, right? You have to remember that these ideas exist, that, the idea that God uses, here's another one, that God uses, here's another one, Way of Mastery, that one's different, let's see, I don't have a bunch of the channeled books up here on the back, but, my favorite one, this one was really, really good. This one here, right? God speaks through people's mouths and says, this is what I want you to know, and people write books about it. This is not something that's crazy. This is stuff that happens. What's funny is that all of these books tend to align with the same principles, but then Paul's principles are fucking way out of line of what all these other books say. So that's my thing. It's like, Jesus here is very congruent with his teachings in the Bible, is congruent with his teachings in this book, is very congruent with his teachings in this book, is congruent with his teachings in the book over there, is congruent with, with everything. And then Paul comes, which is congruent with what this person says, that he decided to, have a conversation with God, and this is what God told him, and this person decided to have a conversation with a being who said that they knew God, and then God told him, right? And everybody is saying these similar things, and then Paul comes along and says something completely different, and so now we have this completely crazy idea. Now, first of all, Jesus says that this book makes the differentiation that Jesus speaks, and then the Lord or the Creator, I forget exactly. There's no way I can do my magical process of just flipping to the page, can I? Oh my God, I did it again. This happens to me all the time. I fucking love it. I have a tendency of just whenever I'm like trying to find a specific thing in a book, I have a tendency of just flipping to the right page. I think it's so cool. Anyways, so the eternal lawgiver is one. There is no other gods than he. He has parted the world with none, nor had he any counselor. Even as a father shows kindness toward his children, so will God judge men after death in conformity with his merciful laws. He will never humiliate his child by casting his soul for chastisement into the body of a beast. So then what the fuck is hell? I had a comment. Somebody asked me about that. Does hell exist? Why the fuck would a loving father... Let me ask you, do you have a child? Would you throw your child into a pit of hell? Would you call yourself a loving and merciful father while you throw your child into a pit of hell? Please. Matter of fact, let's get that newborn baby. Put that newborn baby in your hand right now. Throw that shit in hell. Like, I know that is incredibly offensive. I know that what I just said was incredibly offensive of like having a newborn baby cast that crap into hell. That's exactly how fucked up God is in the Bible, in the Old Testament. So much so that God told the Pharisees that you're serving the devil, that you're serving a murderer. Jesus says in the Bible, when he's speaking to the Pharisees, that you don't even know where the fuck I come from. He doesn't say where the fuck, because fuck didn't exist in that day. I'm sure if Jesus was actually speaking, I'm sure he got filtered out. I imagine Jesus cursing like a fucking sailor. Like, I could just see the guy just being like, what the fuck? You know? but okay, let's finish this. Okay. Let's get through the points here. He will never humiliate his child by casting his soul for chastisement into a body of the beast. The heavenly laws, said the Creator through the mouth of Isa, are opposed to the immolation of human sacrifices to a statue or an animal. For I, the God, have sacrificed to man all the animals and all that the world contains. Everything has been sacrificed to man, who is directly and intimately united to me, his father. Therefore shall the man be severely judged and punished by my law, who causes the sacrifice of my children. Man is not before the eternal judge, as the animal is before man. So, basically, first of all, this, said the Creator through the mouth of Jesus, right? But secondly, what we basically have here is Jesus saying, no, it's like an animal to a human being is how you're going to be to me, right? Let's see here. Everything has been sacrificed to man, who is directly and intimately united to me as father. Therefore shall the man be severely judged and punished by my law, who causes the sacrifice of my children. Man is not before the eternal judge. No, that's not where I was. Therefore I say unto you, leave your idols and perform not ceremonies which separate you from your father and bind you to the priest from whom heaven has turned away. For it is they who have led you away from the true God, and by superstitions and cruelty perverted the spirit and made you blind to the knowledge of the truth. But even the father's kindness toward his children, so soul is chastised. Where is it? Oh, for I, God, have sacrificed to men all the animals, are opposed to immolation of human sacrifices to a statue or an animal. Immolation of human sacrifices to the animals. But yeah, so I'm not going to get too much into that because I am tired. It's 11 o'clock at night and I need to go to bed. But this is kind of the point that I wanted to bring up, was the idea that, God and Jesus, two separate things. Also, let's see if I can do it again. I have to do it with my right hand if I want it to work. Let's see if I can just nail it again. Oh, nope, I can't do it. Nope, didn't work. So, the second thing is the idea of salvation. In that book, Jesus talks about salvation as a return to your pure state, right? Now, once again, we don't know that these could be, we know a lot less about these than we do about the Bible because nobody studies this. This is just something that's completely unstudied because it's not seen as anything that is, worthy. Notovish went and found it, and then some other explorers, he brought it back to Europe. They called BS, said that those didn't exist. Then a second set of explorers went and found it and authenticated it, and the Buddhists went and hid it away because Christians like to destroy and burn things. So as of right now, the Buddhists are in, they have it and they're not giving it up. And I don't think they would. They should, because Christians are probably just going to burn the shit. But yeah, there's this MO, this whole thing that, this whole thing that Jesus himself is just a human being. He is just a human being. He is not a perfect being. There is no hell, right? The idea of God and human sacrifices, right? I mean, look at the Old Testament. Look at Isaiah. So Isaiah is going to be offered. Wow, I'm having a hard brain fart right now because I'm so tired. But Isaiah is going to be offered on an altar. Isaac is the one who got offered on an altar. But the whole point is, let me just pull that up really quick so you guys can see it too. Where is That's going to be John 8:44. That's familiar. John. That is familiar. John 8:44. So this is Jesus beefing with the Pharisees. Jesus said unto them, If God were your Father, ye would love me, for I proceeded forth and came from God. Neither came I of myself, but he sent me. Why do ye not understand my speech, even because ye cannot hear my word? Ye are of your father, the devil. Your is, Ye are of your father, the devil, and the lusts of your father ye will do. He was a murderer from the beginning, and abode not in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he speaketh a lie, he speaketh of his own, for he is a liar and the father of it. This is Jesus talking to the Pharisees, right? This is Jesus talking about the people who have spent their entire lives worshiping Yahweh, right? So, and because I tell you this, you believe me not, and so let me get into this, because this is where I kind of like the Gnostic texts. The Gnostic texts outside of the Bible, there's a whole side of Christianity that kind of came from the idea when Jesus said you can tell a tree by its fruit. There were a lot of people who looked at the Old Testament God and said, oh shit, that's not good fruit. So is he not a good God? And why would God be jealous? If he were the only God that ever existed, why would he be jealous, right? And so the Gnostics, they have the idea that Jesus came from a realm of divine light. He came from Sophia. There's a place in a Gnostic text where Sophia wore Jesus. The idea that there is this omnipotent, unconditionally loving, truly unconditionally loving God that Jesus came to represent. But because, because of just the stupidity of the Christians, they just went and back to worshiping Yahweh, which is the God of evil, the God of murder, the God of hatred, right? I mean, look at his fruits in the Old Testament. A good tree doesn't bear bad fruit, right? Look at the Old Testament. Look at the God of the Old Testament. So in the Gnostic text, and if you're curious about that, you can go on to the channel Morg Official. He's a really cool guy. He goes over all the Gnostic texts on his channel. He uses the researchgnosis.org, I want to say is the name of it, where you can find basically all the Gnostic texts without actually having to buy the Nag Hammadi library, and there's a lot of things outside of the Nag Hammadi and stuff like that too. But there was this persistent idea that the church hated, that they always tried to squash out, that they tried to burn, that they tried to suppress, the idea that the God of the Old Testament is just a phony God. It is just a God of a lower planet, or a lower being, a creator God that created this out of darkness, and and that Sophia came down in the very last moment and gave life to Adam, so that humankind could have access to the divine spark that is God above the God above the creator God, which is Yahweh, right? So if you look at the book of Genesis, why would God be so afraid of humans eating from the tree of knowledge of good and evil? Because maybe God didn't want humans to have the knowledge of good and evil. Because look at the Old Testament God. Look at Yahweh. The dude's psycho. So if his creation now has the knowledge of the good and evil, then they can look at his, which, I think the atheist movement is perfect, because it's like, look at his shit. This guy can't be good, So the idea is that Sophia was this actual, divine being that, whether there was the highest God, who knows? I don't know. Nobody knows, right? Or whether, personally, these are all stories, but the idea is that, this God is completely, just not. Jesus was talking about somebody else. Says, if God were your father, you would love me, for I proceeded forth and came from God. And so if you look at Sophia is the actual God, not of the universe, but of this universe, or what we would perceive as universe. And she wore Jesus, is what some of the Gnostic texts. And so, ye are of your father the devil, and the lusts of the father ye will do. He was a murderer from the beginning. Why would he be a murderer from the beginning, right? I mean, let's look at the floods. Why is it that this all-knowing God doesn't know shit, right? We're not going to get into that. There's plenty of content there. We're not going to go for that today. Let's finish up this video. I got to work tomorrow.
Doesn't flatter our pride or feed our sense of control. It doesn't sound like human invention, but divine intervention. But here's the problem. This implication poses a huge complication. In the Count of Monte Cristo, Edmond Dantes escapes from wrongful imprisonment only to be washed ashore into the hands of pirates. And the crew forces him to fight a fellow pirate, Jacopo, who has stolen from the crew. The rules are simple. Fight to the death. Whoever survives gets to stay on the crew. Edmund, who is a skilled fighter, quickly overpowers Jacopo, but instead of killing him, he shows mercy and spares his life. In response, Jacopo pledges his loyalty and his life to Dantes forever. Let's make it more relatable. If you give someone $20, you are only even until they pay you back. If you help a friend move, it's fair to expect that they'll return the favor when it's your turn. But what if someone died in your place? How much money would you have to pay to settle that debt? How many good...
Okay. Here we go for another one, right? First of all, if you want to be a part of the channel, please contact me. It's thedesertspring111@gmail.com. Just send me an email, and I'll take a look at it. If you want to be a part of the show, I really want to know about how you walked away from Christianity. Everybody goes in different ways. Personally, I went the spiritual route. The reason why I liked that route more, and the reason why I think there's so many benefits to going that route, which spiritual route is very, very vague. That's like saying I went the way of Jesus. Like, that is so fucking vague, right? But the thing that I like about it is that it forces you to understand yourself, to know yourself, forgive yourself, all that kind of stuff. So I prefer that route, but I don't push anything on anybody. If you took an atheistic route, if you took an agnostic route, a universalist, you Buddhist, whatever, I'd love to have you on the show, and I'd love to just talk about how you walked away from Christianity, the feelings involved, the hurts involved, how your family took it, how you did it, all that kind of stuff. I'm kind of wanting to arrange. I'm wanting to arrange a series of videos or something like that that could be a resource for people who are actively trying to walk away, helping them walk away in a healthy way, because it is a crazy cult to walk away from. It is very difficult to leave, especially when you have so many friends, family, community that are so obsessed with the whole thing. So, and of course, like and subscribe, please. Thanks.
Deeds would it take to call it even? If the claim is true that salvation...
Oh, yeah. So Jesus died, thus you owe him. Yeah, everybody dies. Everybody dies. Let me just make that point very abundantly clear. Just because somebody dies saving me does not mean that I owe them my life. Okay? So, if that were the case, Jesus died saving me, that would mean that everybody who goes and fights a war on my behalf, I owe them my life. No, I don't. Right? I can be incredibly appreciative of what they've done for me. If there was a firefighter who in the last second I was choking out on the middle of the floor, curled into a ball, and I was losing consciousness, and this firefighter breaks into the fire, risks his life facing death to pull me out of the fire, I don't owe that firefighter my life. I don't. I don't owe him my every waking hour, my every waking second. I can be incredibly appreciative of him, and I can shower him with gifts, but I don't owe him my life. I don't owe him a damn thing, right? It's a part of his job. Just like Jesus said that he came, supposedly, okay, Jesus never said this, but if Jesus came to die for us on the cross, then that was basically his job. That was basically the purpose for his existence, right? And the idea that Jesus died so that we could have eternal life in heaven, Jesus never said that. Jesus said that he's not God. Jesus said not to call him good because he's not good. There's only one person who's good. And Jesus also said that, I forgot the last thing. There was a point there that was like a fleeting foam. It came and went, and I already forgot. But the whole thing that, you know, Jesus died on the cross for your sins. Who put that guilt on you? It was Paul, right? Jesus did not say, I died on the cross for your sins. I'm going to die on the cross for your sins. And it is important that you believe that I am the Son of God. He never said that, right? Matter of fact, there's a lot of other books kind of in the book of Thomas. He says that we are the sons of God. In this book, that's a channeled book by Jesus, he says that we are the Son of God, right? There's this one thing that he says, that I am the Son of God, and he wants you to repeat that, and it's just like the most sacrilege, heretical thing that you can do, because it goes against everything that Paul taught. So, yeah, come on, guys.
Is not earned by works, but it is a gift from God at the cost of the life of his Son. Then it presents a profound complication.
Let's get this straight. God, supposedly, if God is this eternal being, was it a sacrifice for him to spend 20 years on the planet as a human being? He's God. He created the place. Is it such a big sacrifice for him to spend just a touch, not even a touch, just a blow of time on this planet? There are human beings who have suffered with serious ailments for 100 years on this planet, who have literally experienced nothing but slavery for more than just 20, 30 years. They've literally experienced their entire beingness was being possessed by another person. And their entire generational beingness was being possessed by another person. Jesus came, in 30 years he's gone, and suddenly he's done this ultimate great gift. Okay? He didn't sacrifice much. Just going to make that clear. This guy did not come down with liver disease and kidney disease and tumors and boils and as an amputee and missing 2 legs and having to quabble around on a little. He didn't do any of that. He came down as a perfect human being. And he was tempted Really? For 40 days? He got tempted for 40 days. There's people out here who have been living the Christian life who have been tempted for years, for decades. Jesus got tempted for 40 days. Dog. Is it that big of a sacrifice? No.
Required human response. If God truly died for us, if he paid the full price for our sins with his life and fully took on the responsibility of closing the gap, then the only appropriate response is the one Jesus himself called for: complete and total surrender forever. In Luke chapter 14, 26 to...
Okay, so first of all, Luke, not a big fan of Luke. Luke is an epistle is an apostle of Paul. So Luke never met Jesus either. So everything that's in the book of Luke, we have to take with not a grain of salt, not a tablespoon of salt, but a bucket of salt. Why? Because in Luke, it says that after Jesus Christ died on the cross and the temple veil torn in two, that zombies came out of the fucking ground and walked around the city. So take Luke with a frickin' truckload of salt, and not even granulated salt, like the salt that'll kill you, like those big Himalayan pink salt boulders. Just let that shit fall on you, because that's how much salt you're gonna have to take to really, like, I mean, let's be real.
27, Jesus said, if anyone comes to me and does not hate his father and his mother and wife and children and brothers and sister, yes, even his own life, he cannot be my disciple. And whoever...
Yeah, so what the fuck is up with that? Like... So immediately we have Jesus advocating hate here, the one who supposedly for all up. This is the reason why I just don't believe any of the shit that is by Jesus in the Bible, and that's why I take all this stuff, this book is channel text by Jesus. I take it with a grain of salt. This check by Jesus, take it with a grain of salt. All these books I take with grains of salt. There are always threads, but they come through humans, and humans are filters, and thus... If you distill water, if you take a pot of water and you make chicken soup and you distill and you capture the water and you drink the water, it will have a shit ton of pure water in it, but it will have a hint of chicken soup flavor to it. That is how filtering works. That is how life works. And so when a human being sits down and says, God, come through me, and I'm going to write this down on a piece of paper, you are going to have a filter, a medium that, the divine is passing through, and you have to take it with a grain of salt. But this is one thing that doesn't make any sense, is you have to hate people to follow Jesus, right? I think that's in Luke, which is another reason why I say, take Luke with a grain of salt. Let me see. Let's look that up really quick. Oh my God, it's already going on 11:30. Where in the Bible does Jesus say you have to hate yourself? Here it is. In that case, I was the best. I was suicidal, guys. I was the perfect Jesus follower. I hated everybody. I hated my family, and I hated myself. I was following Jesus. Luke 14:26. Okay, well, I don't need to say anymore. Luke, we're right back to it. So we have that Jesus is saying these things coming from a guy that we know to exaggerate, because there's a zombie apocalypse in the Gospel of Luke. If anyone comes to me and does not hate his own father and mother and wife and children and brothers and sisters, yes, even his own life, he cannot be my disciple. Coming from Luke. What did Luke study? Luke walked around with Paul. Oh, it makes sense now. Oh, okay.
Does not bear his cross and follow me cannot be my disciple. In verse 33, he goes on to say, if any of you does not forsake all that he has, he cannot be my disciple. If human works played any role in our salvation...
Which, okay, yeah, we can see that. So maybe that's the negative truth. And, it's just... Salvation. There's so much exaggeration that goes on. It's crazy.
Then we would have a reason to boast. We could claim some ownership over our lives, and at the very least, somewhat on how to live it. But because Jesus paid the full price, we no longer have any claim to our lives. He does. Jesus did not claim to be a way to God. He claimed to be the...
I gotta go back to that I got to go back to that firehouse that saved me in that one accident, and now let them know that I need to devote my life to them and that they have full, complete claim of my life. It just doesn't make sense, right? I mean, how is it that human beings can be better than God, right? I think that is like the biggest question that anybody who's walked away from Christianity asks. How is it that human beings act better than God, right? It doesn't make any sense. Why is it that we can go in, risk our lives, hell, fucking kill ourselves to help somebody and not expect anything back in return? But then if Jesus does it, well, now we have to, the first thing I'm thinking of is the Kerrville floods or some shit like that happened about a few months ago, where a Christian camp flooded and a bunch of people died, a bunch of kids died. It was really tragic. But once again, if the same thing happened in California at a pagan camp, Christians would be up in arms saying that's what they get because they're not following God. Now here we have Kerrville and a Christian camp, and the narrative is flipped to, the Lord giveth, the Lord taketh away, blessed be the name of the Lord, kind of thing, right? And in that, there was this one guy who was literally offering up his life to save people. Just with zero, he was right there, ready to die, ready to give all of himself to save these kids during these floods. Which is very beautiful, very heroic, okay? That does not mean that those kids now have to devote their lives to the guy who did that for them and have complete, you offered up your life, so now I have to do the same. It doesn't work like that. There is this thing called debt forgiveness. Everybody has done it. Have you ever had a person who owed you $20 and you said, you know what, don't worry about it? Right? Have you ever had a person who owed you this big, big thing and you said, you know what, don't worry about it? We can do that, but God can't. How is it that human beings can be more loving than God? Explain it. You can't.
The way, the truth, and the life. He didn't put himself in the same category as other great moral teachers, prophets, philosophers, or activists. He claimed to be God. And if that's true,
then he also claimed not to be. He claimed to be God, and he claimed to not be God. Because he literally said, there is no one good. Don't call me good. There's no one good but God. So right there, he is showing the separation from him and God, right? This idea that we let's talk about oneness for just a touch, okay? Because this is the school of thought that I tend to prefer, because it's something that I think vibes really, really well with what we see in science today, and what we see in kind of experimental, the oneness is the idea that we are all this one connected big organism. Think of your human body as one big organism. Then think of all the individual cells, all the bacteria, all these individual beings, your mitochondria, separate DNA from your personal being, all of these things that come together to make this body called John, right? Think about that, okay? You take these individual cells, and if you blew me up completely and separated every single cell from each other, then I would cease to be John, right? So then the question, you have the philosophical thinking of, okay, at what point do you start cutting and eventually get to the point to where John does not exist, right? But personally, the belief is in oneness ideology is that the entirety of all existence is one big thing, and we are all a part of it and connected to it, right? Which tends to be where coexist, the idea of coexist, and actually that's not where it comes from, but that's where you get a lot of acceptance of people's kind of crazy ideologies, and that's why I say it doesn't really bother me what you necessarily believe or think, because, you know, we are part of this one big whole that we don't understand, and doesn't really serve anybody to try to figure out what it is. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't try for the fun of it, or, you know, donate some dollars to. I mean, I'd love to study that. But yeah, the idea is that God is this ocean thing, and that we are all these little bits of ocean drops, and that all of these ocean drops come together to form what we call God. So God doesn't become this big pissed off guy in the sky, but it becomes the entirety of existence itself, right? And so then God becomes the inappropriate word in that way, because when everybody says God, they think being in the sky, this dude in the sky, right? And God is just the wrong word to represent that, which is why in some other circles you have the idea of source, you have the idea of you know, the one, you have the idea of the point of creation, the single point, whatever, you know, the infinite, all this kind of stuff. So outside of Christianity, you have all of these other words to describe the single point, whatever, okay? And so the idea is that when Jesus says, I'm the way, the truth, and the life, nobody can come to the Father but through me, is because he's the only one who's actually bearing the truth of what this entire thing is. Because at that point, with the idea that, you know, the idea Yahweh was this horrible being. And if you want to go into this, Morg Official's channel is really, really good into going into of kind of all the other ideologies and stuff like that. But in the idea of Jesus representing oneness, there's plenty of spots in the Bible where you can see that idea come through. Now, that's not to say that that's what Jesus was teaching at all. Although in this book, one of the channeled texts from Jesus, he is teaching that. And in this book, one of the channeled texts from Jesus, he is teaching that. But let's see. All the verses. Okay. John 10:30. I and the Father are one. Let's see. That they all may be one as you, Father, are in me, and I in you, that they all may be one in us, I in them, and you in me. Jesus prays for believers share unity, existing himself in God. Do you not believe that I am in the Father, and that the Father is in me? Abide in me as I in you. I am the vine, you are the branches. I was thinking. So there's a couple of snips here, guys. I'm so goddamn tired. It's literally 11:30 and I want to go to bed. So I'm not going to talk too much into this. I'll make more future. There'll be videos about this topic in the future, but the idea is that Jesus, you know, when he says that if you're not doing this for the least of me, you're not doing, you know, Peter, do you love me? You know, feed my sheep, all this kind of stuff. And you have that where he says, when I was naked, you know, when I was naked, you didn't clothe me. When I was hungry, you didn't feed me. When I was thirsty, you didn't give me to drink. When I was, you know, and then Peter said, Lord, Lord, when were you hungry? When were you thirsty? If you didn't do this for the least of these, then you didn't do it for me, right? So these ideas tend to come out in the Bible and things like that. But we're going to chug along because I do want to go to bed.
Whatever he says about anything is the final say. And as his creation, our rightful response is complete obedience. But this is exactly why so many reject Christ. Not because we can't believe, but because we don't want to. Surrendering.
I think so many reject Christ because of the stupidity of Christians. Let's be real, you know. Christians are some of the most hateful, hurtful people you'll ever meet. They hide behind a mask of love. They hide behind a mask of acceptance. And once you start attending their churches, that mask drops. And if you decide to just be as you are, then you will very quickly find that you are not welcomed in those churches, you know. And the more dogmatic churches, you can go to Lakewood all you want and, you know, show up and never be judged for anything. I get that. But For the more dogmatic churches, that tends to be that way. Which, technically speaking, he does not consider Baptist, Pentecostal, he does not consider any of them to be Christian. So, who knows?
To the lordship of Christ means giving up the rights to ourselves. And honestly, we don't want to do that. And trust me, if that's how you feel, I'm going to be the last one to judge you. I have prayed, thy will be done, with gritted.
So the idea of giving up the rights to yourself, right? So we need to be, possessed by God. But yeah, in spiritual terms, whenever you're walking the spiritual path, like I said, unity, they're one of the churches that I don't mind going to. I like going there. Not because I believe everything that they say, but because they don't believe that Jesus Christ died on the cross for your sins. They don't believe that the Bible is holy, perfect Word of God. They don't believe that the book of Genesis is accurate. They don't necessarily believe that Moses even exists. So they're a lot more realistic with kind of the beliefs, the standard beliefs of, and they just believe that Jesus was just a teacher and nothing else. And so I don't mind going to a church like that. Because it's not a difficult church to go to, right? But even in that system, it is this understanding that if you actually seek God and you find God, you find that you and God are one in the same, right? That God is this big massive drop of ocean and you are just this little tiny speck of H2O that exists within that ocean, right? And so, as to whether or not it's true or not, whatever, but the principle is a much healthier principle, because then when you look at your neighbor, you don't look at your neighbor and say, oh, that is a separate dude other than me. No, you look at your neighbor and say, me and my neighbor are both a part of this divine, beautiful thing called God or existence, whatever. So that's just a little bit of spiritual thoughts. I know there's plenty of atheists and stuff like that on this channel, and so it's just something that's I think it's a spiritual belief that is significantly healthier than Christianity. And to be frank, it is just nice walking into a building and being completely loved for who you are and completely accepted for who you are as you are from the moment that you walk in the door. It's not like you're going to a church where you just got this pressure of you have to do this, you have to do that, you have to be this way, you have to be that way. It's like, no, you can just show up, be yourself, and be accepted and be loved completely. I mean, you just don't get that from any Christian churches. And that's one of the reasons why I like going there as well.
Once, because deep down inside,
not trying to make this an advertisement for their specific, because there's a lot of things that with them that I do genuinely disagree with. But there's not so many disagreements that I can't enjoy being in their presence, right? It's hard for me to enjoy being in the presence of a Baptist who's actively trying to convert me. That is a pretty annoying thing to do. Being in the presence of a person who sees you and says you're holy and perfectly made as you are, and there's no pressure to be any sort of way, it's pretty nice being in their presence, right?
I didn't want to submit. I didn't want to obey. I wanted my way on my time. But over the years, I've learned God's ways, God's plans, and God's timing were always better than mine. In Matthew 16:15, Jesus said, whoever would save his life will lose it. And whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. In John 10:10, Jesus said, I have come that they may...
All right, so let's all go to the top of the mountain and drink Kool-Aid in Jesus' name and all die.
may have life and life more abundantly. Christianity is the truth. But that truth comes at a cost, and the cost is our life. But the beauty of that paradox is that in losing your...
It's the cost of your life, it's the cost of peace, it's the cost of your family, it's the cost of, how many... Let's just do a real quick Google search. How many people have died because... let's do by Christianity. During the Crusades. Okay, so we'll just do during the Crusades. Just the Crusades. 1 million to 3 million. Some, however, argue much higher death tolls from 6 to 9 million people. Now, this is just one very small period of time, just due to Christianity, all that kind of stuff, right? We're not looking over the entirety, the whole of all existence during the entire world. Such a poor Such a poor sentence there. I don't know, but it's in the tens of millions. I want to say it's like 15 to 18 million or something like that. I could be wrong about that. Let me know in the comments what it actually is. I'm gonna end the video here. I'm tired. I want to go to bed. Is he saying anything here? Surrender to Christ. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and stop the video here. I'm too tired to continue this, so once again, like and subscribe. If you'd like to be a part of the channel, it's thedesertspring111@gmail.com. All I want to do is have a conversation with you about your deconstruction journey. You're walking away from Christianity. Where you've walked to doesn't matter. I'd love to have a conversation of where you walk to, because I just want to normalize walking away, because you know, it is just such a there's no peace. You know, I try to tell these people there's no peace in Christianity. There is not true peace in Christianity. And they always say, oh, there is true peace. There is true peace in Christianity. When you experience complete and utter acceptance by yourself, you will be shocked. You'd be like, oh, I've never experienced this level of wholeness, right? But most people have never experienced that, because they either, you know, weren't spiritual and they just happen upon, you know, living a pretty egoic life and happen upon a church, and next thing you know, oh, Jesus is their only, you know, idea of spirituality. It's, or whatever. But okay, now I can't even complete my thoughts. I'm stopping the video here. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. It's a really long one. I gotta wake up early tomorrow. Oh, I need to take a stupid amount of melatonin. Deuces. We'll see you in the next one.